In our book, our protagonist was up in the Himalayas, in the mountains with Sid. She had gotten very sick all of a sudden and could barely move, so Sid had picked her up and came into a cave and laid her down to rest while it started raining. And she woke up in a daze, and she was alone in the cave. She must have fallen asleep. And when she looked out of the brush that was covering the cave to protect them from the elements, she saw what appeared to be someone without a shirt on, with long hair, with a snake slithering across the feet, and thunder struck in the background, illuminating them. And she ended up falling back into sleep. So may this reading relax your mind and awaken your heart, and I'll return to all of you after I finish this section. We're almost on the chapter. I woke to whistling. I was stretched out on the ledge, and Sid was crouched down, lacing his boots and whistling. I cleared my throat. "Good, you're up," he said. "Time to get going. The weather has cleared, but not for long." What had I seen? Not a phantasm, nor a hallucination. I saw him, but here he was in a plaid flannel shirt, jeans, a leather belt with a silver buckle, altogether the picture of a Vermont woodsman, and whistling an American campfire tune, "Don't Fence Me In." "Do you think you can walk?" he asked. Moving about, gathering our bags. Ram Singh is probably trying to find us. "I'll take a look. Get your stuff together." I set myself down and attempted a mountain pose, eagle pose, and downward dog to test my balance. Yoga coming in clutch. My headache, nausea, fever, and cold had disappeared. My limbs appeared to be in working order. I wiped my face with my scarf, zipped up my knapsack, and stepped out. The skies were clear. The sun was up. In the distance, a sparkling waterfall of iridescent rainbows gushed in. When we came to the flow, or hyphenated word, the flower-filled alpine meadow, we heard shouting. Ram Singh and his son Mohan were at the far end, determinedly making their way toward us. Their relief at our sudden appearance was plain, but it was clear that their gesticulations had to do with something else. They spoke excitedly over each other, interrupting each other. Severe floods and landslides had taken place overnight, Sid translated. The jeep carrying the 4 boys had skidded off the mountain road and rolled down a deep canyon. The villagers had tried to reach them, but unfortunately, the jeep had exploded. All 4 had sadly perished. "Oh no, that's awful," I turned to Sid. He was staring into the distance, at the tree line where a deer stood, motionless. The deer gave a quick harsh bark and darted into the trees. "A barking deer," Sid said, looking pleased. "Rare to find one out in the open. The storm has drawn him to the meadow." I began to mouth words, to remonstrate about the boys, but that was when I knew that he knew. From the beginning, he had known that those boys were going to perish. He had been nice to them, allowed them their bonfire, danced and drunk with them, because he knew. That vision of him, icy white, oblivious to the driving rain, thunder, lightning strikes, the thick snake crawling over his bare feet, came before me. I jumped back from him and almost collided with Ram Singh. We should get to the rest house in good time, Sid said brusquely. Best to remain here for the night and set off for Sangam Chatti in the morning. From there we'll most likely have to walk the few miles to the Virat Lodge. Joshi will get you to the airport. I must go north. The pristine lake we had left 2 days ago was muddy and covered with the debris and dead trout. There was no power. The rest house generator had been struck by hail and was out of commission. Gomati cooked us a meal of chapatis and cabbage over a Primus stove, after which I retired to my room, where I remained awake, watchful and afraid. The rain began a frenzied tapping on the tin roof around midnight. I expected my fever and headache to return, but the next morning I woke energized and eager to get moving. There were a few downed trees to get past, but with 3 or 4 stops we were able to reach Sangam Chatti in good time. From there, along with a mass of dazed people, we made our way south, and by the late evening arrived at Uttar Kashi. The mountain had exploded onto the edges of the town, and entire buildings had crashed headlong into the swollen river. Head on down to the Virat, Sid said, moving away in the opposite direction. Let Joshi know you are here. I'll catch up. He disappeared into the crowd. The unflappable Mr. Joshi was at the reception counter, single-handedly fending off a mob with stranded pilgrims, trekkers, tourists, and uniformed soldiers. When he saw me, he swung open the counter flap door and came forward. Very good, Mataji," he cried. "You have come back. Transportation is here. I am arranging. You will reach your homeland very quickly. Just come this side. Wait in my office, please." I clutched at his sleeve. "Mr. Joshi, there was a man, a foreigner. You saw him. That man no good. He is in custody. Very bad man." "Jonas Gerhardt?" I asked. "That is correct," he said. "Very bad man. Foreigner. He came here. Police were here because of storm. They caught him. He is wanted. Very bad man. He is behind bars. They will take him to Kathmandu jail." He led me to his office with its books, papers, and gods. After a few minutes, he stuck his head in the door. "You must go now, please, madame." I was bundled into a van with 6 disgruntled Australians who had come for the whitewater rafting. I turned back to catch sight of Sid on the street, penned in by the crush of desperate people. "Wait," I said to the driver, and stepped out to intercept Sid. "I could stay here, Sid. With you, I could help. Please let me." "It's not time," he said. "When will it be time?" I asked. "Entirely up to you. Go now." We drove away, and I did not look back. As the road curved into a hairpin bend, I reached across, lowered the window, and in a Becky-sharp move flung my Rudraksha necklace into the ravine below. I have a Rudraksha necklace here. Looks something like this. And that's the end of the 13th chapter, but not quite the end of our reading. If you'll just wait a few moments more, there's another layer to this story, as you might already know. Secretly, our protagonist is the Divine Mother, but she has forgotten her true identity, and Sid, her associate, friend, teacher, is secretly the Divine Father, come to remind her of her eternal soul. But they are not the only beings secretly incarnate. Besides the forms of the divine, there are also forms of the demonic. Here is the layer of the story happening at the layer of the demonic. The stars were lackluster, the winds aimless, the gods were silent. In a drafty chamber of the Bavarian castle, Helmut Gerhard rose warily from his marital bed. Berth, his pregnant bride, lay beside him, a mountain of pink flesh, snorting in alternating gasps and sighs. Gerhard was confident that victory was his, but he took little pleasure in the certain outcome. The American had been an unworthy opponent from the start, our protagonist. A poor specimen, greedy and commonplace. He would win the great battle easily with a simple strategic takeover, but there would be no great honor in it. He prodded Berth awake. "I'm going," he said. "Where?" she mumbled. "Nepal. I'll be back when it's time." She turned on her side and began her intermittent gasps and sighs. A trickle of saliva ran down from one corner of her fleshy mouth. Berth, a peasant who perpetually reeked of some fetid bovine odor, would produce the sons he required. Gerhard grunted in morbid anticipation. Tough, strong, ruthless. Rory had been smart, who was actually the late husband of our protagonist, but weak and soft, hardly a demon at all, whereas Jonas, the brother, was blatantly stupid and given to filthy habits from which he had been continually rescued. Gerhard gazed admiringly at his reflection in the ornate full-length mirror. The Swiss mountaineering jacket and hiking pants fit the bill. He might acquire Nepal while he was there, he mused, and strapped on his Rolex Explorer. The country was racked with corruption, infighting and earthquakes, and primed to submit to a firm hand. Easy pickings, but first he had to find her, neutralize her. He called for his pilot as he bounded down the baronial stair, as gleeful as a boy on his first hunt, on his first killing spree. And so ends our reading, and ends the third part of this book as a whole. Next time we'll start the fourth part, titled Ayam Brahmasmi, a quote from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, an ancient scripture, which translates to I am Brahman, a truth of universal consciousness. So we'll pause our reading there for now, and I thank you for listening. I look forward to continuing with you, so that the duality of the Divine Mother and Divine Father becomes a realization, not just in our protagonist lives, but as something we can experience with and as ourselves.